The NEC is often said to be administratively burdensome and quite bound in process and procedure, which makes it a more complicated contract to put in practice. Ian, do you think that's a fair comment?
I think there's some truth to that statement, though in fairness, the process and procedures are there for a reason. They're meant to be a means to an end. So the idea of having things like early warnings is to try and proactively deal with issues before they occur. But what tends to happen is people sometimes misuse the process or misunderstand it and raise early warnings for things that have already happened or things that need to go straight to a compensation event process. So yes, it is, but I think those processes are there for a reason and a benefit if they're used properly.
Ewan, how do you find people's use of the process and procedure? Is it appropriate?
Yes, I'd say it is appropriate. I'd agree with Ian's points there that it's a proactive form of management. I'm concerned about parties who are not well versed in NEC, who aren't necessarily aware of the procedures, etc., that they should be following. Because as soon as one procedure starts falling down, it can impact in other areas of the project.
John, the process and procedure has got to be driven by someone somewhere within the project team. Who do you think should be driving the process?
I would say it's actually there's got to be driven by two parties. One, the person representing the employer, the project manager, and then an individual within the contractor, the project director or whatever title they are. But they've both got to be doing it. My experience is if only one is doing it, then that puts them in the driving seat of the project. You don't get as good a project, but they get the better result commercially, and that could be the project manager or the contractor.
Ian, do you think the process and procedure with the NEC actually makes it more efficient through acting by being proactive and dealing with problems ahead of time, or is it just an additional cost burden on the project which actually makes it less efficient and more costly?
I think if it's done properly, it should be beneficial. As I mentioned previously, it's a means to an end, all of these processes. The idea of having compensation events dealt with in a timely fashion gives people certainty. You can then move forward. The next change occurs. You can implement it into an agreed program and move forward. So that's the idea and the benefit of it. But if people aren't doing it properly and they're just generating paper, not agreeing things, then it's counterproductive. And actually, the compensation event process can become a cottage industry of bouncing quotations backwards and forwards. That's not the intent or the aim. And if you start going down that route, then you're going to get all the problems of the process with none of the benefits.
Yeah. So how then, John, do you ensure that the process and procedure is being adhered to?
I have a golden rule for communications, which is discuss and agree orally and then confirm in accordance with the contract in the form which we read, copied and recorded. So all the best projects that I know of, they have dialogue. So rather than chucking a quotation over the contractual parapet and someone opening it for the first time and going, well, I didn't agree that methodology and I haven't priced up what I wanted. Oh, I didn't tell them what I wanted. And they've used that rate for the first time. Well, I haven't sat down and seen if that rate's correct. Well, actually, if you're in the same room and you're discussing it and you disagree with a rate, the contractor QS just picks a file off the cabinet and goes, well, this is the rate from the supplier. That's why I used it. Oh, fine. And that way, instead of it being 3 weeks to submit a quotation, 2 weeks to respond, yes, for complex ones, you might need that time. But for a lot of them, it's 10, 15 minutes discussion, and then someone pings over an email and they go, that's what we've just agreed, and pings it back.
So do you think then, Ewan, that the process and procedure in the NEC is agile and adaptable enough to deal with the variety of different situations that you get on site? Or do you get too locked into the process says I must do it in this way, therefore that's how I'm going to do it?
Well, I think it is adaptable if you need to agree something with the other side to deal with something in a further period of reply or response like that. So you can adapt. But I do have concerns because I come across situations where, or what I call compensation event overload, where you can get a great number of compensation events and it's very difficult to deal with them all. And the other side I'd also say about compensation events is that there are some with time impacts that are very complicated and they're very hard to agree because they cost or sound a lot in monies as well. So I think the NEC is adaptable in answer to your question by the agreements, but there are some situations where the guidelines in the standard form unamended are very difficult to actually operate practically.
So if I summarise that then as there is a lot of process and procedure in the NEC, but generally there's a reason for it. And the reason for it should be to drive the right project objectives, and if that's all done properly, actually you can make significant gains and cost savings and work together in a more collaborative environment to achieve a better project outcome, perhaps, than otherwise. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.